for this very important conversation that we are going to have on education for life. We had a session in the morning on looking at education for life in schools and in higher education institutions. But any change that we want to bring is going to depend also on education for life, that is lifestyle for environment, that we are able to do with adults, with youth, and with communities. And so this afternoon session is focusing on this aspect of education for life. So before we plunge in, as we have the Indian tradition, we will start with a small prayer. Shubhangi ji, may I request you to please lead us in the prayer?
Yes. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Shubhangi ji. My name is Suparna Divakar, and I'm leading the subgroup on Education for Life, which is under a larger umbrella of the working group on life, lifestyle for environment. And Yojak is leading the C20 working group on lifestyle for environment. And we have had other such webinars across other subjects like fashion, sustainable habitats, and so on. The intent of this webinar is to listen to academics, practitioners come academics who have worked on this theme and also learn from their insights. And see, each of us also is very much engaged in these topics. And so we thought we will spend a little time in gaining insights from our own collective experience, which can then become inputs for a policy document or a policy brief that we are preparing. This webinar is being held as a precursor to a conference held on 3rd and 4th of June in Mumbai. Before I invite everybody to speak, I want to just establish a few house rules. May I please request everyone to keep their mics on mute when you're not speaking. And it would be wonderful if you can and have the bandwidth to switch on your videos. It helps all of us and it helps the speakers to connect across these topics. If we are able to keep our videos on, the session sort of comes alive. So I would request that you please do that. And also, as you may be aware, we are also recording this session just so we don't miss any of the points that are being made during this conversation. I have the pleasure of requesting Dr. Gajananji Dange, who is the president of Yojak, Center for Research and Strategic Planning for Sustainable Development. He is the India Coordinator for Life Working Group of C20. And Dr. Dange is a member of the National Rural Livelihoods Promotion Society, Ministry of Rural Development, and former member of Rajiv Gandhi Science and Technology Commission, Government of Maharashtra. Gajananji, may I request you to please address the gathering here.
धन्यवाद सुपर्णा जी, सभी का स्वागत है। और ये C20 के अंतर्गत जो सभी के अनुभवों का संकलन करने की प्रक्रिया चल रही है, इसमें स्वयं के अनुभव के द्वारा यहाँ पर जो कुछ अच्छे सुझाव देने के लिए वक्ता ज्वाइन हुए हैं, उनका मैं बहुत स्वागत करता हूँ। हमारी अपनी एक भारत की परंपरा है, वादे वादे जायते तत्वबोधा। पूजनीय शंकराचार्य जी ने यह परंपरा का प्रारंभ किया था कि हम लोग चर्चा करते जाएंगे और चर्चा करते करते तत्व उभर कर आएंगे, जो तत्व समाज की धारणा और समाज की आगे की दिशा तय करने के लिए उपयुक्त सिद्ध होंगे। यह C20 की प्रक्रिया भी उसी परंपरा का अवगाहन है कि हम लोग अपने अपने अनुभवों का आदान प्रदान करेंगे और केवल भारत के लिए ही नहीं, आज समूचे विश्व के सामने जो कुछ पर्यावरण के जुड़ी समस्याएं है उसका समाधान सारा विश्व देख रहा है। और हम लोग ये मानते हैं कि जो जीवन शैली की संबंधित हमारी भारत की अवधारणा है और उन अवधारणा के ऊपर आज के समय में जो उदाहरण चल रहे हैं उनके चर्चा से कुछ अच्छा नवनीत उभर कर आएगा और केवल भारत के लिए नहीं तो विश्व के लिए भी कुछ अच्छा साबित करेंगे। तो आप सबको बहुत बहुत निवेदन है कि आप अपना अनुभव साझा करें। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Gajanand ji, for setting the context for today's webinar. I would like to invite our first speaker, Srimati Bijal Brahmabhat. Bijal Ben is the director of Mahila Housing Trust and has extensive experience and broad knowledge of intersectional challenges that are mediated through housing and habitat, governance, gender in low-income urban communities, as well as migrants in cities. She advocates for rights to improve living conditions, foster climate resilience, and overall economic security. Bijan Ben holds a degree in civil engineering and has a certificate in urban planning and management from the Institute of Housing Studies, Netherlands. Today, we have invited Bijal Ben to speak on women's education for life in urban underserved communities. So over to you, Bijal Ben.
और धन्यवाद। गजानन जी ने जो टोन सेट किया है, हालांकि मेरी हिंदी इतनी शुद्ध नहीं होगी क्योंकि रोज बरोज उसमें बोलने का मुझे आदत नहीं है मुझे, लेकिन मैं प्रयत्न जरूर करूंगी कि मैं हिंदी कम इंग्लिश मिक्स में जितना भी बात कर सकूं, तो उस तरीके से मैं अपनी बात रखना चाहूंगी। तो मैं जिस संस्था में काम करती हूँ, महिला हाउसिंग ट्रस्ट जिसका नाम है, महिला यानी बहनें और हाउसिंग माने जो आपने कहा सुपर्णा जी आवास। आप मेरी स्क्रीन आप सबको दिख रही है क्या?
जी,
अच्छा, आपने शेयर किया।
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, हाँ जी,
हाँ हाँ। तो फिर आप ही को फिर स्लाइड बदलनी पड़ेगी।
जी जी, आप जैसे, हाँ, आप जैसे बताएंगे वो शेयर हो जाएगा।
नेक्स्ट करिए। तो जब तक ये नेक्स्ट स्लाइड आती है तो मैं बहनों का, खास तौर से जो असंगठित क्षेत्र की बहनें हैं, उनका क्या प्रदान है हमारे जो देश हैं उसके इकोनॉमी में, क्योंकि कई बार क्या होता है कि ये प्रदान जो है वो बिल्कुल ही अदृश्य रह जाता है। तो जो हमारे जो शहर है, हम सबको मालूम है कि भारत बड़ा तेजी से प्रगति कर रहा है शहरीकरण के ओर, और उसमें शहरों का जो हमारा जीडीपी है उसके अंदर 50% तक का प्रदान है, और उसमें जो बहनें काम कर रही हैं वो 90% बहनें जो काम कर रही हैं वो असंगठित क्षेत्र में है, यानी उनकी मालिक और जो कामदार हैं जो बहनें, उनका कोई संबंध नहीं है, यानी फिर उनको कोई दृश्यता नहीं है, उनको कोई सोशल सिक्योरिटी माने कि उनको पेंशन नहीं है, पीएफ नहीं है, कोई योजनाओं का लाभ नहीं है। तो ऐसी ये बहनें हैं और उनके पास संसाधन कम है, ज्ञान भी कम है, खुद की आवाज भी बहुत कम है। इन बहनों के साथ हमने पहले काम करना जब शुरू किया, और जो संस्था है वो हमको पता चला कि भाई जो रोजमर्रा की उनकी, जिसे हम जीवन कहते हैं, लाइफ, उनमें उनके तो रोजमर्रा के इतने मतलब रोजी के अलावा, रोजी तो एक मूलभूत उनका जो समस्या है वो है, लेकिन रोज रोज शहरों में घर तक पानी लाना क्योंकि पानी नहीं है, शौच करने के लिए जाना, इसमें काफी बदलाव अभी आया है क्योंकि जैसे हमने स्वच्छ भारत अभियान वगैरह हमारी सरकार ने चलाया उसकी वजह से, लेकिन जब ये चीजें कम ही थी, जब शहरीकरण के ऊपर अभी कुछ सालों में ही सरकार का ध्यान ज्यादा बढ़ा है, पहले उतना नहीं था, तो क्या हो रहा था कि ये सारी चीजें, पानी लाना, उसमें रोज 2-3 घंटे बिता देना, या शौच के लिए बाहर जाने के लिए ना सिर्फ जगह ढूंढो, लेकिन बहनों को सबसे ज्यादा समस्या होती थी, क्योंकि अगर वो सगर्भा हैं, अगर वो छोटे बच्चे हैं उनके साथ, या मान लो कि बूढ़ी बहनें हैं, तो वो सिर्फ जगह ढूंढना नहीं, लेकिन उनकी खुद की, जिसे अंग्रेजी में कहते हैं डिग्निटी, का भी बड़ा सवाल हो जाता था। हम लोगों ने शहरों में देखा है कि उनके पर, क्योंकि जगह नहीं होती थी जहाँ पे ये खुले में शौच कर सके, तो बड़ा पथराव होता था। और तीसरा कि बहुत सारी ये बहनें, चाहे वो कागज बीनने वाली हो, चाहे वो बीड़ी बनाने वाले, पतंग बनाने वाली, ऐसी ऐसी बहनें, वो उनके घर का उपयोग करती थी अपने काम के, हाँ, नेक्स्ट आप लेके जाइए, काम के स्थल के तौर पे। तो हमने सोचा कि हमने जब काम शुरू किया, उसके बाद तो हमने काम ये ऐसे शुरू किया कि हम लोग ये जो उनकी बस्तियां थी उसमें हम लोग जाने लगे और बातचीत करने लगे। एक बस्ती में जाके पहले तो हम 15-20 मीटिंग करते थे, और उनके क्या मुद्दे थे, ये उनके आवास को लेकर, जो कि उनके काम की भी जगह थी, जैसे पानी चाहिए या इलेक्ट्रिसिटी चाहिए, या तो उसके ऊपर काम करने लगे। और उस समय तो, अभी हमारा CSR लॉ शुरू हुआ है हमारे देश में, उस समय और अभी भी बहुत ही ज्यादातर सरकार ही इन सब मुद्दे को बहनों के लिए सुलझाती थी। तो ये, लेकिन बहनें का जो जीवन था वो अपने घरों के आसपास काम में, बच्चों को पालने के लिए, तो हमने सोचा कि भाई उनको किस तरीके से एजुकेट किया जाए ताकि उनके जीवन में वो सरकार के साथ बैठ के बातचीत करें और ये बदलाव उनके साथ रह के लाए। तो पहले उनको संगठित किया, सरकारों के बारे में बताया, शहरीकरण के बारे में बताया, फिर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कैसे लाएं। तो ये सारे जो हमारे काम थे, अपने घरों को कैसे बेहतर बनाए ताकि उसमें उनकी रोजियां ठीक से चले, मतलब जगह बढ़े, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी आए तो भी रोजी बढ़ेगी, उनको कोई हटाए नहीं जहाँ पे वो है, तो वहां पे भी रोजी बढ़ेगी। और उसके बाद अभी जो 2015 से की जो जलवायु परिवर्तन की बात हो रही है, क्योंकि वो भी उनके जीवन में बहुत सारे बदलाव ला रही है बड़ी जल्दी से, तो ये कैसे किया जाए, तो ये काम हमने शुरू किया। लेकिन जो हमारा अप्रोच था, अगर मतलब जैसे हम आगे बढ़ रहे थे, वो ये नहीं कि हम खुद करें, लेकिन ये कि इन्हीं बहनों को सिखाएं कि ये कैसे कर पाए। तो सबसे पहली बात थी कि भाई आप अपना खुद आवाज आगे लाएं। तो हम क्या कर रहे थे कि हम एक बस्ती में जाएं जिसमें 100 से 250 घर हो, यूजुअली एक बस्ती में होते, कई शहरों में बहुत बड़ी बस्तियां होती है, जैसे दिल्ली में 7,000 तक घर है एक बस्ती में, लेकिन जयपुर में अगर आप जाओ तो एक घर में 50, एक बस्ती में 50 घर भी मिल जाएंगे, लेकिन 100 से 250 आमतौर पे होते थे। तो उन घर, हर एक घर को वो बहनें, हर एक घर से एक बहन को सदस्य बनाती थी, और इतने घरों में वो 10-15 बहनें अपने आप को चुनती थी जिनको हम उनका जीवन के सुधार के लिए एजुकेशन देते थे। तो क्या था वो एजुकेशन, जो बहुत अच्छे से उन्होंने सीखा, हमने भी उनके साथ रह के बहुत सीखा। तो वो एजुकेशन ये था कि खुद को कैसे संगठित करें अपनी संस्थाओं में, जो कि हम कम्युनिटी एक्शन ग्रुप कहते हैं, और उसको कैसे चलाएं, मतलब कैसे मिलना, कैसे एजेंडा तय करना जो उनके विस्तार के अच्छाई के लिए हो, उनके जैसे और जो उनके विस्तार के घर हैं, उनके जो मुद्दे हैं, जैसे रोड है, पानी है, मकान अच्छा करना है, जमीन चाहिए, तो वो सब एजेंडा उनके कैसे बनाए कि क्या उनको विकास करना है, उसकी मिनट्स कैसे लिखें, कैसे हर महीने वो मिलते ही जाएं और उसके ऊपर आगे काम करें। वो प्रथम उनका खुद का संगठन कैसे करे वो सिखाया। दूसरी चीज हम लोगों ने जो उनके साथ रह के की वो ये थी कि अपनी सरकार क्या है और उसका प्रशासन कैसे होता है और कैसे हम सरकार से मिलके काम कर सके, क्योंकि अगर अपने देश का आप 74 जिसको कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट कहते हैं, उसमें ये बात चली है कि शहरों को अपने जो शहरों को विभाजित किया जाता है, सबसे छोटा स्तर होता है जो वो वार्ड होता है एक, तो वार्ड लेवल पे सारे बजट जाएंगे और उसके द्वारा काम होगा, तो योजनाएं भी वहां तक जानी चाहिए। तो ये बहनों ने ये जो उनके जो हमने संगठन बनाए जिसको हम कम्युनिटी एक्शन ग्रुप बोलते थे, वो अलग अलग झुग्गियों वाले कम्युनिटी एक्शन ग्रुप इकट्ठा होके एक वार्ड के सारे साथ में आए और फिर अपने वार्ड के लिए अपनी जो म्युनिसिपल सरकारें हैं उससे बात करें। तो ये बहुत ही मतलब ये बहुत एक इंटेंस प्रक्रिया थी। एक बस्ती में जाके हम पहले पानी की बात करते थे, फिर शौचालय की, फिर हम इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की बात करते थे। और शहरों में क्या होता था कि अनलाइक जो गांव है हमारे, जहाँ पे एक ही उनकी संस्था होती थी कि ग्राम पंचायत है, वो सबसे पहली उनकी संस्था है। तो शहरों में कई बार क्या होता था कि पानी राज्य सरकार दे रही थी, जबकि उसका रख रखाव म्युनिसिपालिटी को करना था। इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कई बार जैसे अहमदाबाद शहरों में प्राइवेट सेक्टर यानी खानगी निजी कंपनियां वो दे रही थी, तो उनको बहुत सारे एक्टर्स के साथ काम करना था, तो वो थोड़ी सी प्रक्रिया जटिल थी। तो हर बार हमको पहले पानी, फिर शौचालय, फिर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, फिर मकान का सुधार, तो एक के बाद एक हम लेके जाते थे। तो ऑन एन एवरेज एक जो बस्ती में हम लोग 10 से 12 साल उनके साथ, कई कई जगह पे तो 25 साल भी हमने काम किया है। और जो बहनों के पास कुछ नहीं था, मतलब एक नल भी नहीं था अपने घर पे, उनके पास आज मकान है अपने। उसके बाद आई जलवायु परिवर्तन की बात, तो वो मैं सिर्फ ये आपको दिखा रही हूँ कि जलवायु परिवर्तन, क्योंकि शहरों में जलवायु परिवर्तन बहुत अच्छे से जुड़ा हुआ है। किस तरीके से शहरीकरण होता है, कैसे रोड लगते हैं, कैसे ब्रिज बनते हैं, आपका मकान कौन से मटेरियल का बना हुआ है, वैसे चीजों की वजह से जलवायु परिवर्तन की गर्मी बढ़ेगी या आपकी झुग्गियां भर जाएगी पानी से, बारिश होगा। तो उनको बड़े सरल तरीके से गेमिंग के द्वारा कैसे हम सिखाएं हर बहनों को कि जलवायु परिवर्तन क्या है। क्योंकि जब हम गए थे तब बहनें बोल रही थी हाँ कि बारिश सीजन में नहीं हो रहा है, गर्मी बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ रही है, लेकिन वो उनकी समझ में ये था कि ये तो सब ईश्वर की मर्जी है। तो बाकी ये एक जैसे ये स्नेक एंड लैडर गेम है, तो उसके द्वारा हमने सिखाया कि नहीं, ये ईश्वर की मर्जी नहीं है, बहुत सारी चीजें मनुष्य ने खुद की है। तो उसकी वजह से जो हमारे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री हैं, जो लाइफ मिशन की अभी बात कर रहे हैं, जो कि हर एक व्यक्ति अपने अपने जीवन में और अपने आसपास कैसे बदलाव लाए, खासतौर से जलवायु परिवर्तन के लिए, तो उसमें अगर आप देखोगे कि ये जो हमने नेक्स्ट आप करिए, जो हमने सारी वैज्ञानिक जो बातें थी वो गेमिफिकेशन के द्वारा, वीडियोस के द्वारा, कि भाई गर्मी कितनी बढ़ने वाली है। फॉर एग्जांपल हम जब गर्मी बढ़ने वाली है वो बात बहनों के द्वारा आती थी कि बढ़ रही है और उसके ऊपर हमें काम करना है। तो हम क्या करते थे कि उनको सिखाते थे कि आप भारत का जो मीटीरियोलॉजिकल डिपार्टमेंट है वो क्या है और वो कैसे रोज गर्मी के बारे में वो फोरकास्ट करता है, तो वो आप पढ़ें। और अपने घर के अंदर, जैसे ये एक एग्जाम्पल है, ये रूफ लगा हुआ है जो कूल रूफ है, तो बहनों ने अपने घर खोल के हमें ये रूफ लगाने की इजाजत दी। ये मीना बहन है, उन्होंने अपना घर खोल के सबसे पहले ये रूफ लगवाया। तो हमने उनको सिखाया कि आप जो आईएमडी जो फोरकास्ट कर रहा है गर्मी का, वो नापिए और अपने घर के अंदर रूफ लगाने के बाद नापिए, और अपने बाजू वाला घर जो ये टीन शीट है में सबसे ज्यादा गर्मी होती है, और उसका भी आप नापिए टेम्परेचर खुद, तो आपको पता चलेगा कि नहीं फर्क है। तो बहनों को पता चला और फिर उन्होंने अपनाया ये रूफ, और उन्होंने टेक्नोलॉजिस्ट को भी बोला, तो उन्होंने टेक्नोलॉजिस्ट को सिखाया कि नहीं, मुझे ये ऐसा नहीं चाहिए, ऐसा फ्लैट चाहिए, ताकि उसके ऊपर मैं शाम में सो सकूं, मैं काइट भी चगा सकूं। अगर मैं लोन लेके रूफ डाल रही हूँ तो आप ये फ्लैट बनाइए, रेलिंग वाला बनाइए। तो टेक्नोलॉजिस्ट ने उसके हिसाब से सुधार किया। तो आज ये टेक्नोलॉजी कितनी सारी बहनें, लगभग 17,000 से करीब बहनों ने अलग अलग शहरों में अपनाई हुई है, तो उनके जीवन में वो खुद परिवर्तन ला रही है और उसकी वजह से एक मुहिम चली है जो देश में भी जलवायु परिवर्तन के मुद्दे पे ये बहनें बदलाव ला रही हैं शहरों में। खुद अपनी बस्ती से निकल के शहरों में ये बात कर रही है कि आप इसको अपनाइए। तो ये एक नेक्स्ट
बिजल मैम, और
हाँ।
2 मिनट में खत्म कर सकते हैं आप?
हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
जी, थैंक यू।
मैं आपको एग्जांपल दे रही हूँ कि जैसे सरकार के साथ बैठ के म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन के साथ फ्लडिंग ना हो, मतलब पानी ना, जल भराव ना हो बारिश के दौरान, कैसे एक्शन लेती है, तो क्या क्या एक्शन होगी। जैसे हमको हमारे कैच पीट को क्लीन करना है, रूफ्स को क्लीन करना है, सुअर और ड्रेन्स को क्लीन करना है, कौन करेगा, कब करेगा और कब उसका अंत होगा, मतलब बारिश से पहले, बारिश के दौरान और बारिश के बाद में। तो ये पूरा प्लान बहनों ने महिला हाउसिंग ट्रस्ट और एएम मतलब म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन के साथ मिलके बनाया है और उसके ऊपर काम करती है। नेक्स्ट, बस ये एनडीए है मेरा। नेक्स्ट कर दीजिए आप। तो हम लोग करीब 9 राज्यों में काम कर रहे हैं और ये करीब अब हम नेपाल और बांग्लादेश में भी पार्टनर्स के द्वारा काम करने की बात कर रहे हैं, जहाँ पे ये बहनों की बड़ी मुहिम छिड़ेगी। नेक्स्ट, और उससे करीब, ये आंकड़ा आपको दिख नहीं रहा है, लेकिन 4,50,000 जो बहनें कुटुंब है, जो हाउस होल्ड हैं, उनके जीवन में बदलाव आया है। मतलब करीब 40 लाख लोग अपने जीवन में ये लाइफ एजुकेशन लेके बदलाव लाए हैं। तो मैं जो सबसे बड़ी बात यहाँ पे रखना चाहती हूँ बंद कर इसको, वो ये है कि बहनें मतलब सिर्फ ये एजुकेशन नहीं कि जो उनको घर कैसे रखना या रोजी का एजुकेशन, लेकिन बहनें मतलब ये भी एजुकेशन की सरकार के साथ कैसे काम करना, वैज्ञानिक समस्याएं क्या हैं। बहनों के हाथ में हम अगर टेक्नोलॉजी भी रखते हैं, जो कि बहुत कम लोग जब बहनों की बात करते हैं तो ऐसी सोच रखते हैं, तो वो अपनी बस्तियों में, अपने शहरों में और हमारे देश में कितना बड़ा बदलाव ला सकती है। और जो हमारे प्रधानमंत्री का जो मेन जो बात है कि हम जीवन में कैसे बदलाव लाए, उसको वो कैसे साकार कर रही है, उसका एक ये उदाहरण है। बस मैं यहीं पे विराम करूंगी।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद बिजल बहन। और मुझे लग रहा है कि जिस स्तर पे ये काम हो रहा है इतने सारे सिटीज में और इतने सारे बहनों के साथ, और आपने जो कुटुंब की बात की, वो बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है, क्योंकि फाइनली द चेंज हैज टू हैपन at institutional level, like the family is the most basic unit. Thank you very much for sharing. I invite Dr. Soumya Prasad as the next speaker. She is a tropical ecologist and has been, of course, immersed in research, but now she is also been burying herself in looking at how to bring these practices from principles into practice through teaching and through working with communities. But she herself is a great inspiration because in her own life, all these things that she's teaching, she has actually attempted to practice, which means for energy, they have solar power. They are doing rainwater harvesting. She drives an electric car. She's doing composting, food and vegetables being grown in her own garden, etc., etc., etc. I don't even know how long that list is. She has also started an initiative called Do No Trash, which is in Dehradun. And basically, the idea is to educate communities, but also inspire them and show them how change can be brought about through workshops and through practice. So I invite you to listen and be inspired. Soumya, over to you.
Thank you, Suparna, for a very generous introduction. Okay. I'm really humbled, especially after listening to Bijal Ben's talk. Very inspiring. Okay. And very motivating as well. Okay, and the work I'm presenting today is not just my work, it's work done by others that live and work with me, Riddhima Kharwa, especially Raman Kumar, and the entire Dunutrash community here in Dehradun and other cities that have taken up this work as their own. Okay, so let's get started. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. See, like as Suparna mentioned, most of my professional life, to the previous one, I've worked in the forest. Okay, and previous slide, please. Okay, I've worked mostly in the forests, and these two gentlemen, my field assistants from the Solika and Beta Kurumba community, I learned more from them often than professors at the Indian Institute of Science where I studied. Okay, the Kurumbas, you know, the elephants in the Nilgiris are very, very common. We bump into them all the time. But अक्सर ये होता था कई हफ्तों तक हमें हाथी नहीं दिखता। हमारे कुरुम्बा लोगों का ये कहना है जब किसी भी जगह में हाथी का जो पॉटी होता है ना वो बढ़ जाता है, बहुत ज्यादा हो जाता है, तो हाथी वहां नहीं रहते, उनको वो स्मेल पसंद नहीं है और वो वहां से चले जाते बहुत दूर। ओके, एंड फिर वो जो हाथी का डंग है, एलिफेंट डंग, इट बिकम्स कॉम्पोस्ट, उससे बीज भी उत्पादित होते हैं, बिकॉज एलिफेंट्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सीड डिस्पर्सर्स ऑफ द फॉरेस्ट। एंड वो जंगल भी वापस आता है, जो जिस जंगल को हाथी ने खाया था, घास वास पत्ते सब तोड़ के गए थे, वो जंगल भी दोबारा धीरे धीरे ठीक होता है, तब हाथी वापस आते हैं वहां पर रहने, खाना खाने। जैसे हम नेचर में देखते हैं, अपने अपना कूड़ा जो है, हाथी का जो डंग है, वेस्ट, इट इज रीजनरेटिव। ओके, इट्स अ साइक्लिकल प्रोसेस। it's almost the rule in ecological cycles, but हमारी जो ह्यूमन साइकिल है अब बहुत लीनियर हो गया है, और हमारी वेस्ट जो है हमारे घर को रीजनरेट नहीं कर रहा है, उसको डिस्ट्रॉय कर रहा है, और सिर्फ हमारी घर नहीं, बाकी जीव जंतु का घर भी खत्म हो रहा है। Okay, next slide, please. So around 2011-12, we started working with garbage, okay, our group, and हमें ये देखने को मिला कि ये सारे जानवर, जंगली हो या देसी, जो गाय भैंस बकरी, ये सब कूड़े पे पहुंच चुके हैं और उनकी डाइट में बहुत ज्यादा प्लास्टिक आ रहा है। okay? हमने ये भी देखा कि प्लास्टिक खाने से अराउंड 90 to 95% ऑफ आवर लाइवस्टॉक, गाय और भैंस बकरी, अपने पेट में प्लास्टिक लेके घूम रहे हैं, और जब प्लास्टिक इनके पेट में एक बार जाता है वो बाहर नहीं आ सकता, और इससे क्या हो रहा है, जो लाइवस्टॉक ओनर है उनकी लॉसेस 25 से 40 हजार तक है पर ईयर पर एनिमल। ओके, most of the livestock, especially in rural India, are owned by marginal communities, often women who try to sustain their household expenses by selling some milk, and the losses are very significant. जहाँ पे जिस कम्युनिटी में भी हमने ये जाके काम किया है, ये कैलकुलेशंस किया है आज तक, उनमें हम खुद परिवर्तन देख रहे हैं। वो हमें आके पूछते हैं कूड़े के बारे में हम क्या कर सकते हैं, वो इतना मोटिवेट हो जाते हैं कि हम बहुत जल्दी उन गाँव में, उन जगह पे हम परिवर्तन देखने लगते हैं। ओके, सॉरी, माय हिंदी इज नॉट वेरी गुड। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। ओके, सो 2017 के आसपास हम लोग दिल्ली आ गए थे, तब पढ़ा रहे थे यूनिवर्सिटी में, और हमें लगा कि दिल्ली में रह के व्हाट आर वी डूइंग, वी आर जस्ट कंट्रीब्यूटिंग टू द प्रॉब्लम, इसलिए हम देहरादून आए, और वी वांटेड टू प्रैक्टिस इकोलॉजी, नॉट जस्ट टीच और रिसर्च इकोलॉजी, एंड लगभग हर डायमेंशन में हमने सोचना शुरू किया, वो ट्रांसपोर्ट हो, खाना हो, अपना ओन घर का रिपेयर या कपड़े के हर एक छोटे चीज के बारे में सोचना शुरू किया हमने। और ये इट्स वेरी इंस्पायरिंग, ये परिवर्तन की जर्नी में, कि जब लोग हमारे पास आते हैं, देखते हैं, एंड वो इंस्पायर होके जाते हैं, इट इज एक्चुअली मच बेटर देन टीचिंग इन क्लासरूम्स। वी आर नाउ रीचिंग मेनी मोर पीपल डेली। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। ओके, तो ये जो है, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। ओके, This led to this program. We'll tell you a bit about it. And among all the dimensions of life, the sustainability education, I feel personally that waste management or waste education is the simplest one to solve. This is something we can all do in our backyards very, very easily, and it has huge benefits for society, ecology, and economy. Next slide. However, as a society, as a nation, we seem to fail to address waste anywhere, everywhere. We see this huge pile up. Okay, this is not just a problem in India. Across the developing world, we have this problem. In the developed world, the problem is just shifted out of sight to some other country. Okay, what is the main issue is that governments and CSR agencies here in India are mainly involved in transporting the waste from one source, either the household or the commercial enterprise, to a landfill site, or clearing it from mountains, riversides, and oceans into a landfill site. The landfill site is also located on a riverbed often, or a forest area, or in some on the edge of the ocean, and the waste eventually ends up polluting the water. In landfills, almost always waste is burnt. It ends up polluting the air. So waste, once generated, doesn't disappear. It just enters our Panchabhuta in one dimension or the other. So just by shifting the problem, transporting the problem, we are not solving it. In fact, often we are making it much, much worse. Next slide, please. Okay. The second problem is this very simple standard communication we are seeing on every wall, everywhere in this country. Just now I was hearing this jingle of a vehicle going around, Swachh Bharat ki communication. We've all heard this about segregation, composting, all these messages, very common, but it doesn't motivate any of us to address any of these dimensions. Very, very few people are motivated to solve these problems by listening to these messages. हम सबको पता है, but हम करना कुछ नहीं चाहते हैं. तो फिर करें, what do we do? How do we motivate people? That's the biggest question. Next slide, please. Okay. So अगर हम behaviors change करना चाहते हैं society में, हमें appropriate messages चाहिए. एक साइज, जैसे अगर मैंने 40 नंबर कुर्ता पैजामा इस पूरी ऑडियंस में बांटा, वो सबको फिट नहीं आए. कोई मोटा है, कोई पतला है, कोई छोटा, कोई लंबा. ओके, सो वी नीड मैसेजिंग, वी नीड स्टोरीज एंड नरेटिव्स विच मीट डिफरेंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट इन द सोसाइटी. हर एक के लिए हमें अलग अलग, जो हर ग्रुप के लिए है, हमें अप्रोप्रिएट अलग अलग कहानियां और मैसेजेस ढूंढना है. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज. ओके, this is where we have been on this journey of trying to understand how do we make people care. And we find that, there are 4 main groups we work with wherever we go in India. Okay, of course, the adults are separated from, students. Okay, and in adults, the men and women behave very differently, respond very differently to messaging. Okay, we also separate out businesses because their motivations are often very, very different from households. So let's go further. Next slide, please. Okay. So we've been working on developing different stories for different people. Like Bijal Ben said, okay, we've been working with bringing a scientific understanding to the society, not about some science done in Australia or New York about some whales swallowing plastic. We've been working with very local knowledge and understanding about plastic ingestion by cows and the impact it has on household economics with rural communities, and this has been very effective in rural communities. However, when it comes to impacts on animals, okay, even though this is a very common sight across India and we have sort of become immune to seeing cows, dogs, other wildlife coming and feeding on garbage, very few people are motivated to address waste management because of the problems there. But however, when we work with the impacts on human body, okay, the really worrisome impacts on the human body, through consumption of food packaged in plastic. There is a mountain of research taller than Mount Everest on the impacts of plastic toxins that leach into foods or beverages, water, juices, packed in plastic, Okay, and the impact that it has on the human body is considerable. Okay, for example, bisphenol A, a plastic toxin which leaches in, it is a hormone blocker. It's has a very strong influence on your hormone ecosystem, and now circulates in our blood in higher concentrations than hormones, given the amount of packaged food we eat, like biscuits, namkeen, chips, bread, etc. And bisphenol A is the only known trigger for the autism spectrum disorder. We don't know any other trigger. 1 in 40 children now is being born autistic, and the prevalence is likely to go up. It also has serious impacts on male and female fertility, PCOD, a whole bunch of hormonal issues. It has impacts on brain development in the children of ages 0 to 6, on attention deficiency. A whole lot of research has come forward in the last few years. Taking this knowledge, this body of knowledge, in a language that is understood by people, not in the scientific language, but as narratives that people can connect with, has been very, very impactful. Next slide, please. Okay. There are, of course, there are very different ways in which we need to approach adults and children. And I know you've been looking at LiFE for schools and higher education in the last couple of days. But nevertheless, we need to remember that adults in the household are the key decision makers. They are the ones making the decision about how the family lives, how it addresses even a simple thing as waste disposal. Okay, for adults, we have been following the principles of disaster risk communication. Okay, very, very basic principles, which are like where we assume that basically people don't have time. They're very stressed, and nobody has time to listen to long stories or explanations. So we go to them with very simple messaging, which is structured like any news channel, like any advertisement. We used a lot of science from the media world to developing very effective and strong messages, often on the negative. That is the impact on health or economics. We've used messaging which is strongly data-driven, and most importantly, we use messages which lead to actionable goals. Okay, please avoid junk food, etc., etc., etc. You can replace it with fresh fruit, giving them alternatives. Often the switch is not very difficult because this is what the family practiced maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or even just one generation ago in most cases. Working with children, we are very clear that children are not meant to inherit the burden. We do not want to burden them with the climate crisis or the waste crisis and make them completely depressed and think that ab kuch nahi ho sakta hai. Most important aspect, I think, of sustainability education with children is to connect them to nature, bring that excitement in about observing a bird, butterfly, a tree. Okay, just open that window, just look at the world through the eyes of a child, build that excitement, get them to observe the problem, define it in their own words, and help them, empower them to actually devise local real world solutions, coming up with अपने own solutions जो अपने आसपास, अपने स्कूल या घर के आसपास जो समस्या है, वो क्लाइमेट हो या कूड़ा हो, उसके साथ आप छोटे छोटे जो है एक्सपेरिमेंट्स कर सकते हैं. जैसे अभी बिजल बहन ने दिखाया वो रूफिंग के साथ, ऐसे ही छोटे छोटे प्रयोग करके we can solve these issues. And this is what we've been doing, working with around 150 schools here in Uttarakhand in the last 5 years. Okay, next slide, please. So with adults, again, as I was saying, men and women differ very, very clearly. For women, women really are our most effective agents. Working with women between the ages of 25 to 55 is very quick, very effective. एक workshop में हम परिवर्तन देखने लगते हैं, changes मिलता है, because women are very concerned about the health of their own bodies, about the health of their family, the children. They want to address these issues. They're seeing the impacts of toxic food on their children, and they also determine how the household disposes its waste. Men, on the other hand, are mostly concerned with economics. Also, men, we find, are making the decisions more about procurement of junk packaged food. Okay, chips, namkeen, biscuit. Generally, आदमी लोग लेके आ रहे, लोअर इनकम ग्रुप्स में हमें ये देखने को मिल रहा है कि more than 60% of the household income for food is going to packaged junk. Instead of buying vegetables or fruits, most often men feel happy getting a chips or biscuit for the children that they feel, oh, बच्चे खुश हो जाते हैं, than buying healthier alternative. When we get men to understand the economic impacts of the health, okay, on lowered immunity, बच्चे कितने बीमार हो रहे हैं, कितना खर्चा हो रहा है डॉक्टर पे आपके साल भर, और आप इसको कैसे कम कर सकते हो, then men are motivated to address some of these issues. But mainly we find that women are the catalysts. Please, next slide.
Soumya,
Yeah.
you have 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, we'll be done.
Yeah,
But what
go.
is most important, what is really, really important when we are working with societies is to have tangible, measurable results. Okay, this is really critical for transformation. We have people coming back from our workshops even several years ago, coming and telling us, oh, it's had this and this impact on our lives, and that's critical. Okay, this is not something you're just entering into a report that you're submitting to a funding agency. This is you're working with people directly. One of the workshop models we use is we work with schools to address sustainable food for the children, developing meal plans for them, and also trying to educate parents about the risks of packaged food. And we start seeing transformation within 2 weeks across schools. Okay, one PTA workshop, one parent-teacher workshop can translate to impacts across the entire school, because they're often, बच्चों के वो बहन भाई होते हैं दूसरे क्लास में, या उनके दोस्त हैं, और वो आइडिया स्कूल में बहुत जल्दी फैल जाते हैं. तो छोटे से छोटे स्कूल में भी जहाँ 200-250 बच्चे हैं, एक साल में हम थ्रू दीज वर्कशॉप्स 1 लाख से ऊपर मल्टीलेयर पैकेजिंग हम कम कर सकते हैं. इससे ज्यादा भी कम कर सकते हैं अगर हमने बड़े स्कूल और केयरफुली हमने कम्युनिटीज के साथ काम किया. तो हमें लगता है जैसे जिस प्रॉब्लम को मैंने पहले डिफाइन किया, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज, जो सबसे पहले मैंने डिफाइन किया, हम कूड़े को वी कांट मेक इट डिसअपियर, एक जगह से बस दूसरे जगह पहुंचा रहे, टिपिकली विद आवर स्टैंडर्ड अप्रोचेस राइट नाउ. अगर हमें ये प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करना है, वी नीड टू टेक बिहेवियर चेंज अप्रोचेस. दीज आर स्लोअर. These work takes several years to impact communities, but we need to focus strongly on strategies that reduce waste. Okay, do no trash needs to become a mantra, and we need to really understand how there are many tools in our toolbox. You can look at our portals. Next slide, please. Okay. So if any of you interested, नेचर विद्या करके हमारी पोर्टल है, स्कूल्स की प्रोग्राम में आप ज्वाइन कर सकते हो. ये पोर्टल हमारी ज्यादातर हिंदी में चलती है और इंग्लिश में भी है. ओके, एंड टीचर्स के लिए एक स्ट्रक्चर्ड करिकुलम है एनवायरमेंट सस्टेनेबिलिटी एजुकेशन के लिए, और डू नो ट्रैश प्रोग्राम में भी आप शामिल हो सकते हो. कई वर्कशॉप्स और मॉड्यूल्स हैं जो हम आपके साथ शेयर कर सकते हैं. थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर गिविंग अस दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी टू शेयर आवर वर्क, and please join our community. Next slide, please. You can join us on social media through our portals as well, and we look forward to collaborating with many of you here. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Soumya. And just listening to Bijal Ben and you, we have.
Sorry, your audio is not.
I think she had our good programming.
Your audio is gone, Suparna.
I think she's facing some issues with her network.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure she'll be back in a minute or so.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Soumya, could you keep up that slide with the social media connect? Maybe if people want to connect now, they can.
Yeah. I'll just.
Yeah, sorry, I am back. Today afternoon seems to be our tech glitch afternoon. For some reason, I don't have electricity right now, but I have managed to connect on my dongle. What I was saying is that, there were a bunch of strategies that Bijal Ben talked about. there's another set of strategies that Soumya is talking about. And I think the kind of rich inputs that can go into our policy document, right, from different strategies for different contexts. This is just amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our
Thank you.
next speaker is Dr. Seemant. And Seemantji, you managed to get your technology back?
Yes, like now I am connected.
Okay.
I also had a power cut and my internet had gone, but now I have connected mobile.
Right.
So I think I should be able to continue.
Yeah. So maybe if it helps, you can switch off your video. It might help us to hear you better. So for our next speaker.
Your voice is breaking, Suparna ma'am.
Oh, my voice is breaking. Is it breaking for everyone?
It's clear to me here, Suparnaji.
Yeah. So Seemantaji, maybe you want to switch off your video. It might help to get better bandwidth. Okay. I will also switch off my video and it might help. So our next speaker is Dr. Seemant Kalita, and he will be speaking from his experience on working with youth, and particularly his experiences of working with youth, youth education for life in the Northeast. And he has had many years of teaching, research, and program management, largely in the field of environment. And he was program director at CE in the Northeast till recently. He has just joined CELCO. And Seemantaji, we wish you a very, very long and happy innings in your new avatar at CELCO. And I think I can hand over to you now. I think Vibhavari is helping us with the slides, so perhaps you should not have a problem. So can I hand over to you?
Thank you so much.
Yes, okay, sure, thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So as Suparna ma'am has told, I have worked for last 16 years with Center for Environment Education as the program director. And I was heading the National Green Core Eco Club program nationally. I was also heading the water and sanitation vertical of the center. And then we had extensive Northeast program focusing on youth, school, teacher education, and especially focusing on the species conservation program. So that is a brief background. And I still continue to be an advisor in CE and still associated with the work in CE. So most of the discussion that I will be leading today will be based on my CE experience, because CE in CELCO, I am very new. I have joined not even 1 month back. So I am still trying to imbibe the culture of CELCO and trying to learn what CELCO has been doing. So this will be a slightly different role of incubating, and mostly we'll be working with youth and entrepreneurs here. So can I go to the next slide? Yeah. So when we were working with schools and the young children, we realized that when they grow old, their impact on environment suddenly increases during the transition period from the childhood to the youth. And that's how we started doing our own level of homework. Like, what can we do? What kind of philosophy we should imbibe in our program? What kind of analysis we should do? And how do we really psychologically do an analysis of youth as a whole, and then try to customize our program so that we can address their particular mindset and can try to bring about some change. we started with the global scenario, and we really found out that India is the country with the highest youth population, 356 million, which is like 65% of our Indian population is. Suppose if we go by the definition of youth, it will be slightly less than 60%. It's in around 27%. But in age group of 35 years and below, then it is 356 million. And then China comes next to us, and that is the difference is almost of like 90 million youth in India and in China. So that way, the Indian population is much younger than the Chinese population. And then we look, can we go to the next years? So then we try to analyze the Indian scenario, why we really need to focus on the youth education, particularly for environment. We know that 65% of Indians are below 35 years of age, and 27.5% are actually officially youth. When we say officially, if we go by the National Youth Policy of 2014, then the policy says you can consider the age group between 15 to 29 years as youth. Now, I obviously consider myself as a youth from my heart, but then officially probably they will not accept me as a youth. And then we try to see how are our policies and who are our policymakers. And if we are like in the context of G20 or C20, if we are thinking of like impacting policies across the geography, not only in India, then we need to really analyze what is our own policy environment. And then we found that only 1.5% of our legislators or our parliamentarians fall in that age group below the age of 29 years. So which is quite astonishing, and surprising actually, because you see a country with 65% young population is having only 1.5% representation of youth in the parliament. So the decision can always go wrong. Or the ownership can go wrong. So that's where probably we need to really focus on sensitizing the youth towards several things, not only towards environment protection, but also towards taking the ownership, taking the stewardship, and taking a larger role in policy making and policy influencing. So can we go to the next slide, please? This one. So we tried to do an analysis. We found that in Indian education system, at the age of 16 years, we normally complete our secondary education, unless there is some failure or something like that. But mostly this is the age when people wrap up their secondary education. And then at the age of 17, they start with a tertiary education, the college or higher secondary education. And in most cases, the very recently acquired youthhood or adulthood, you can say, not really adulthood, but youthhood, they get a freedom. They mostly we see that at that age, some of the students are starting to live in hostels. They move to another city. They move to a new university or new institution, meet new friends. So they start taking independent decisions. So we need to really focus at that age and have customized program so that we can influence their choices. Because the environmental impact that we see, particularly the ones which Soumya-ji was referring to, are mostly because of wrong choices. So how can we really hit the iron when it is hot and really influence? So that is what we try to build in our programs. And then at the age of 18, we get the voting rights. Now, if we are not mature enough, if you are not trained how to take informed decision or mature decision, or if we don't learn how to make the correct choices, then as a electorate or as a citizen of this country, we will probably fail to do justice to the nation as such. So that is another age group where we need to focus. Then moving to the age group between 20 to 25, another very critical decision we make, that is selecting of our career. So because most of the Indians start earning at that age group between 20 to 25 years. So some start their career a little early because of family pressure, some complete their tertiary education and then start earning, but mostly it is within that age group. And then moving slightly beyond, between 25 to 29, most of the Indians get married also. So that is another choice where we need to really be informed and make a correct choice, not only about the life partner, but also about the lifestyle that we will be adopting in the post-marriage life, or even having a kind of a selection, whether to have child, at what age we should have child. So all those decisions are also very, very critical, and we need to really train our youth about all these. And then if you look at the average age of an Indian at present, the current population of India, the average age is 29 years. That means we are, as a nation, we are a youth nation, you can say. So that's how our responsibility in having a right policy in place, or in having right examples in place, is very, very important. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so we try to analyze the root and fruit of our acts and the environmental impacts. Like if we go by the basic needs, food. So youth is the largest consumer of food, particularly the imported food or the fashionable foods as such. So the overpacked foods, the like refrigerated or cool foods. So these are mostly the choices of youth generation. Then if you come to the next basic need, which is clothes or fashion, there also we can see that the highest consumer, or the largest consumer group of apparels is youth. And there also we have to really make informed choices, like do we go with local clothes, do we go with imported clothes, do we go with apparels which has got environmental impact, what is required for making a particular type of cloth or particular kind of shoe or leather products. All those decisions are very, very critical. Then youth is the group which has got the highest mobility also. So when it comes to mobility, then again we have to have a very conscious choices. Say, for example, short distances, can we go on foot? Slightly more than that, can we use bicycle? Can we use two-wheelers rather than using four-wheelers? Can we use public transport? How can we influence our policies for public transport? So all those kind of things are very, very critical when it comes to youth. Then youth is the group who uses the maximum volume of plastic, polythene, PET bottles, and Tetra Pak items, and any use and throw materials also. So that is the age group where we probably need to focus a little bit more, so that they are aware about the environmental impact of all those materials that they have been using, how the resources are depleting, what is the water footprint of all our activities, what are the carbon footprint of all our activities. So all those details we try to normally package in our programs, like whether it is a high school program, whether it is a higher secondary school program, whether it is a completely out of the school or out of the institution youth program. There are youth networks also where we are involved in. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this portion I have almost already explained. So the wrong consumption choices, overuse of certain materials, then overuse of carbon fuel, overuse of persistent organic pollutants, which are leading to air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, and all the pollutants thrown on the drain is leading to clogging of the drain, artificial flood, mostly in the urban localities, and over packaging of materials. So all those things are very much related to consumption choices that we make at our like youth age, or because once we learn to consume certain thing, changing the behavior is very difficult. That's what exactly Somaji was referring to. Behavior change is a very difficult ball game. Like if you can form right behavior at the very beginning of your life, or at the very beginning of your youth, or towards the end of the school career, then that can continue for the rest of our life. But if we form wrong behavior till the age of 20 or 22 or 23, by the time we come out of our educational institutions, like our behaviors are almost set, and then it's very difficult to change the behavior at that age. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Simantaji, you can wrap up in another 2 minutes.
Okay, so then this is the background why we practice our youth program. Now, what do we practice in youth program? We mostly try to give messages for making choices related to our basic needs, choices related to our career, choices related to transportation, and how can we make our world self-sustained or sustainable, and certain social goods, say for example equity, equality, gender sensitivity, all these things we try to package in our programs. Can we go to the next? So and for youth engagement, we cannot have one channel only. Formal education plays a very critical role. And as Center for Environment Education, we have always been closely working with the education departments and with the Eco Club program for a long time. So formal education at the curricular level, we are there in the curriculum committees, we are there in the textbook writing groups also. We could also influence the national curriculum framework. So that's where we try to influence. Teacher education, we are doing a big role, and that's where it is another pillar of formal education. In the non-formal sector, Eco Club, I have already mentioned. Then we also run a lot of youth networks. We also work closely with NCC and NSS so that we can influence their activities as well. Then we need to have some star campaigners and youth ambassadors for different activities. We had a program called Paryavaran Mitra, where we had APJ Abdul Kalam as the ambassador of the program, but we also had youth ambassador in every state so that we could engage with them. Then hands-on nature camping programs, service learning camps in villages, so that we can learn things, youth can learn things doing by their own hands. And then we also promote and run some international networks like SCIEN, South Asia Youth Environment Network, in partnership with UNEP. Then we do a lot of media campaign. Can we go to the next slide? So particularly in social media, we are very active. Next slide, please. Just an example: Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp groups. So, and then there are many other platforms that we use. Can we go to the next? Some examples of some of the programs I just want to name. I don't want to go into details because that will take a lot of time. Next slide, please. Yeah, so certain precautions we have to keep in mind while designing the youth programs, particularly while framing policies for youth. One is that that's the age where they have got a lot of anxieties. There is a tussle between what is right and what is wrong. There are peer pressure. Somebody will say कि ये करना है, ये सही है. Somebody will say कि नहीं, ये नहीं करना है. Parents will say something else. Society will say something else. So that anxiety and the adrenaline impact, there are a lot of hormonal changes going on inside the body during that particular transition period. So we try to keep all those factors in mind so that we are psychologically appropriately addressing their concerns also. There is a lot of fear in them, the fear of whether I'll be successful or not. If I do this, whether society will say something or not. So all those fear leads them to an indecisive kind of situation. So we have to guide them how to take right decision. Then there is a hesitation. There are because of hormonal changes, shame is something which is very like prominently visible in that particular age group, particularly the younger groups of youth, with whom we deal mostly. And then lot of stress from the career point of view, from the point of view of establishing themselves economically in the society, proving themselves in front of their parents, withstanding the expectations of teachers, withstanding the expectations of the peers. So all those things we have to keep in mind while designing youth programs. Next, please. Some examples, some of the names I would just mention. National Green Corps Eco Club. Here we get to work with 14 to 16 years age group. So 15, 16 years is very, very critical because that's the transition time from secondary to tertiary education. National Environment Awareness Campaign is little open-ended. We can work with all the age group under this program. And this program, we had actually created a very good cadre of youth across Northeast. They were the volunteers and they were guiding the communities in the rural areas how to do environmental awareness in society. Then Paryavaran Mitra was another program which could reach out to 2 crore students across India, covering more than 1 lakh school. It was a massive program, and it had a big impact also in terms of like reducing the carbon footprint of the institution, with the educational institutions. We did pre and post surveys of this institution. Their electricity consumption came down, their water consumption came down, the school campuses were becoming greener, polythene use was reducing. So those kind of impacts we could create through this particular program. Then there's one ongoing program of CE called Young Reporters for Environment. This is mostly with the universities and with the media institutions. So the aspiring reporters and the reporters who are already undergoing training. So we try to work with them and try to like guide them how to become a green reporter. Next slide, please. Just one more slide, I think. Then the Tide Turner Plastic Challenge, like CE is conducting in partnership with UNEP and WWF. So 5 lakh youth are participating in that program across the country. And we have a species focus program for conservation of tiger, rhino, elephant, Gangetic river dolphin, hula gibbon, then turtles. So all these programs we partner with MOEFCC, and at the grassroots level we partner with several organizations. IPJ is one of them, and then we are also running a program called We for Climate. So that is a CE partnership program. In 5 states we are running this program, 250 villages, and like 2.5 lakh people have been reached already. So these are some of the activities that we have been doing for youth. I tried to capture like what are the key points that we need to focus while framing the policy for youth and framing education programs for youth. And these are finally some of the youth networks which are already available where youth can actually participate. And in our policies also, we can actually promote some of the youth networks, or at least through the established networks like NSS and NCC, if we can have organized and very well-planned kind of environmental conservation activities, then that will really lead to some success. South Asian Youth Environment Network, CE and UNEP runs that. Sasiani is another network for South and Southeast Asia that is run by CE. International Handprint Network is run by CE. Sumnet India is led by Parishar. Sakti Sustainable Energy Foundation is supporting it. CE is also part of it. And in that particular network, we are mostly promoting the sustainable urban mobility, because youth is the group who are actually the maximum user of vehicles. So that's where we try to kind of motivate youth so that they can take good informed decision. And the United University is promoting another network called Regional Centers of Expertise on ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. That is also mostly for university students and youth. So that is another program where we are involved and we are trying to motivate people and trying to guide the education like frameworks of different states also as a member of the NCF committees at the state level. So these are the networks that we have been involved in, and we are doing our activities. Thank you very much. We can go to the last slide. That's the winding up.
Thank
we have
you.
to think
Thank you
today
so
to
much.
ensure for a
Yeah.
better tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Simantaji. I think we've looked at women and communities. We've looked at communities and the kind of education that needs to happen. We've looked at youth education, and a lot of inputs we have received from all the previous speakers. We now move to an area that many times we don't really talk about, which is, the space of entrepreneurship. Now, we all talk about the need to move from, current exploitative, non-environment friendly products, etc. And when entrepreneurs do come up with the alternatives, how easy or difficult is it to actually educate consumers when they are making choices? And so I want to invite Srimati Reena George, who has been a co-founder of the Bartan Company. She has had a corporate career for many years and has entered the education space a few years ago. And now she is the co-founder of an organization called Brihat, which is basically embedding Bharatiya Vichar in culture, in public policy, in education, and how are we able to bring some of these, fundamental, not just from a philosophical perspective, but from a practice perspective, how do we bring all this back into the way we are making life choices, the way that we are building our cultures going forward? So over to you, Reena ji, and welcome to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Namaste. I hope you can hear me and see me.
Yes, we can do both.
Thank you so much, Suparna ji, for inviting me, and very inspiring talk by all the previous speakers. And in fact, I was just thinking that a lot of what they spoke, is what we are trying to address at the entrepreneurship level. And it'll be interesting to see what I want to share from the journeys that I've had in both Brihat and the Bartan Company. As a founding member of Waste Management Initiative, which has been spoken about quite a bit, I feel that just a moment of reckoning that happened after a house party that the founding members had, and the next day when we woke up and we had to push all this bags and bags of garbage out of sight, in Soumyaji's words. It just goes out of sight and out of mind as well, right? And that is when we realized that the problem of single-use plastics, right? Suparna ji, you can move ahead, actually, is, not as, quickly forgotten as we'd want it to be. It's not something as pushing it out of your house or your communities. There is a huge landfill. I don't know if, people may be familiar with this huge landfill near, Delhi, Haryana highway. The first time I saw it, I literally had tears in my eyes. I could not believe that I thought it was some hills, and it was just, alarming to think that is the kind of waste that we have generated. So it's not an easy space to be in, because waste is seen as something that is not our business. So many of the times when we start off, I'll talk about a small thing that we do with consumers in terms of how to educate about waste itself and not to shun it away. But before that, I think in terms of the problem of plastic, I think all of us know. So the Bartan Company, or TBC as we call it, in short, is specifically into addressing waste generation, but more so at source. So not really after the waste is generated, but how do we ensure that waste is not waste until you throw it, right? So how do we bring that sort of behavioral change? And the previous speakers also spoke about different target groups or people who can be addressed within their own setup and context. And here, while we already know the problem that is put there, and this is kind of true, and in fact growing in terms of the numbers that you see or the facts that you see. There's only 9% that is recycled in the entire world, the plastic thing. So it's not a problem that none of us are aware of. Problem is already, pretty clear. But what is it that stops, all of us from adopting, a more a lifestyle that is more in consonance with nature? This is something that we asked ourselves, and mostly the factors that have played out can be kind of, clubbed into these 4 things. First is, of course, awareness. You are aware, but then what do we do? That awareness, not many people have, right? And then we thought today, I would say, even back then when we started, the alternatives were not so obvious. The alternatives were not so easily, accessible. But today, thanks to social media, thanks to a lot of influencers who are, making their own strides in terms of presenting the alternatives and making them accessible, online shopping. All of this has helped us to bring the alternatives and accessibility closer. The key part is the adaptability in terms of being able to do that for life, being able to set that example for our children, being able to set that example in our, organizations, right? Next slide, please. So when we thought about, the waste, problem, for us, every change begins at home. So for us, the everyday environmentalism, as we would like to call it, is what is the major factor. And I think Soumyaji spoke about, women being the biggest group, and they are very easily, bought in when we talk to them and explain what are the factors that, really impact themselves, their families, and the earth that we live in. So from the individual, we move up and scale up to a lifestyle that is conducive to this kind of, conscious living. And then we scale that up to the sustainable communities or societal groups. And from there, it goes on to influencing or being the champ at, a corporate or your own startup, or working with the government. Like in Hyderabad, we work with the GHMC, right? So what are those things that we can do? At the individual level, we next slide, Suparnaji. So at the individual level, what we have tried and has worked mostly, and that catches on, is we first begin with the big thing that all women are, quite perturbed about. It is the health hazard, which we speak about extensively, about plastics getting into their beat. And it's not just plastics. There are, in every choice that a woman or a family member or a decision maker makes, in their everyday life, there are always sustainable choices, and just nudging them a little in that direction always helps. So the biodegradable waste is the easiest, because there are today a number of DIY methods to home compost and have it smell free, rat free, and whatnot. Because usually when people come to us, composting is like, oh, it's for those environmental enthusiasts. Not really, not anymore, I would say, right? There are big influencers who are making this as easy as just getting a simple pot from a from a pottery from a potter, which we use for like matkas, which we use for water. We can do it with that. Like I myself compost with that method, and it works perfectly. So we do workshops in this. And what next we do is, if you look at the source, right? So biodegradables is one that is sorted. What is the others that form the waste bin? And here I want to talk about how when people come to us, the first thing that we do is usually we meet them at some place, right? So either their homes or their offices, and we say that, okay, we want to start and we take them on to their balconies, to the backyard, or where the trash is, and we actually ask them to peer into the trash bin and ask them to talk to us about what is the trash and how did it land up there, right? And if there were choices for each of the things that they see, not probably every single, while it may sound repulsive, it's not been such a bad experience. what it does is it sends the customer on a journey of reflection as to why is this piece of paper or this piece of packaging lying here, or this unnecessary sort of small things which used for, like a straw is a good example, a single use plastic, any cutlery is an example. Why is it there? Is this something that we could avoid? Absolutely. And they agree with us that it is something that's possible to address. So once you've addressed the biodegradable,
Okay, is it my network or Reena ji's?
It's about her net.
Ah, right. So we'll just wait. I think she'll come back.
Yeah, let's wait.
Reena, are you back? Is off completely. Give me a moment. I'll just call.
Shall I call her?
I'm just
I'm
calling.
so sorry.
I'm just calling.
She's
Sorry.
back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Oh, she's back. Okay. Right.
Sorry, I had a power cut too. Suparnaji.
Yeah. No.
Okay, I've connected to my internet. So let's see. So I don't know where you lost me. So I was talking about biodegradables and then the plastic packaging. So here we introduce natural cleaners which replace all the packaging. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard of bioenzymes. So basically it's a fermentation process which is extremely simple, just with your vegetable peels and citrus peels most preferred. And you use some parts of jaggery, some parts of water, you allow it to ferment for 3 months, and then it's a liquid that can be used safely for every single thing. It's an all-purpose cleaner, which means you're cutting out your Harpiks, all of those packaging that you invest in and a lot of money is already gone. So this we have seen has been a big success with communities, especially when we do bioenzyme workshops with communities. People are thrilled to understand that because there are people who are allergic, who develop allergies to Harpic and Lysol and things like that, especially kids these days, because their entire microbe that was available to us as kids have already reduced, because we've managed to sanitize our environment so much. So because of allergies, people reach out to us and ask us to kind of take sessions, and this has been a very enriching journey, because I've even been able to go to my daughter's school and be able to control pests, mosquitoes, and ensure that their entire school's cleaning happens with bioenzymes. And this we've already covered. The next slide, please. So composters, which can be used even from a curd, big dabba that you get, you can use that to actually compost with just, by drilling holes. Okay, so this comes to, the previous talk where youth and communities, how do we influence them? So here, interestingly, I hope I'll not be seen as somebody who's evil, but we work on the, sort of guilt and societal pressure factor here. So we did a marathon for the first time. It was a cyclathon, actually. And we kind of tricked kids into becoming our ambassadors. We got their buy-in when we told them that we're going to waste so much of plastics, and it's all going. Kids are extremely interested, and they're very open to trying these things. And when kids are placed in water stations where you could have used bottles, and imagine a cyclathon, people are thirsty in a city like Hyderabad. Thousands of bottles could have been used. But the minute we put a big poster saying, this was a concept called Upar Se Piyo, which is basically we put a poster saying that, the olden day way of drinking, where you just use the same glass, but you just drink from above and keep it back. And then we have a set of 15-20 steel glasses, which is basically our, the business that we are into, which is, cutlery rentals. So we bring that with a poster, and we ensure that people know what to do. And when kids did it, it was very difficult for adults to sort of refuse or not follow, right? And hence they came, and even though it's a cyclothon and people were, actually raising, people had the sensibilities to come and ask us, what is this? I want to come back and, talk about this. This is so amazing, right? So it's not really, the initial hook is a guilt, but later when you understand why we're doing this and what is being saved from it, right? In one of the next marathons, we had a counter for every glass that was, that was used by the participants. We said that, this liter bottle was saved. And then we counted that and put that in our stories. And it was a very fascinating, sort of moment for us also, because we didn't know that, people use more than 2 bottles, in these kind of situations. So this is one. And in terms of larger, more next slide, Suparnaji. Sometimes the whole collective power also, influence. I think one more slide. Sorry, I wanted to show the wedding, in which we had. Yeah, this one. So this was a very, and this is something that, people shy away from. They say, oh, marathons, people are, fast. They want to just get water, whatever way they get water. I mean, these are things that that get thrown at us sometimes. We could go back and tell them that an elite, Telugu wedding that happened in a 5-star hotel, we could influence just because of, 3 people in that family being extremely adamant that they wanted to make it a zero waste wedding. And the minute an affluent wedding, makes this sort of decision, the kind of aspiration that creates for, many people is such a multiplier effect that you cannot imagine. Because in this wedding, what we did was, there were, objections to having the whole glass and Upar Se Piyo, but we said we'll keep that. And then we kept another, set of bottles there next to in the same, kind of counter. And we said, people who want water bottles, you can take them, but this is what water bottles, create and where it comes from. We put the entire life cycle of the bottle, and then showed them some gory pictures of what happens to the bottles and the oceans. And then there is this, nice rosy picture of Upar Se Piyo and, just how much we are using. Just the visual, impact of that. And, it was funny because it's an elite wedding and people are, doing this, and then they're a little confused. And we are like, if you want to take the bottle, yeah, please go ahead. And when they go there are a whole set of others who are sitting there and judging them and watching them. And that's the societal pressure that you can very much create as an entrepreneur, and bring about the change. Because slowly people were very, guilt driven to go and pick that water bottle beyond all that they saw. And we ended up, just in that wedding, it was a 5,000 member wedding. I think more than a minimum of 10,000 bottles were, sort of saved from there. So these are things at a community level, at a event level that we can do. And of course, there are, things like a flea market where we, give people for the whole day, where they're spending the whole day, right? And imagine how many times you'll buy, food, how many times you'll buy a drink. And if for all of that, if we could take care of one single set, they give us a rental of 100 rupees and, we give them a whole set, which they can carry in nice bags, because there should not be any kind of inconvenience to the client, because in that cusp of change, you cannot put any kind of roadblock. And that was our thought process. So this is something that we did. And in terms of youth, I just wanted to also make a point here. Many times in these kind of events, what happens is that there is this, I don't know, forgive me for the word, but incessant need to share, right? On social media, wherever they go, whatever they're doing. So when they see something like this and they're doing something different, right, from their peers, there is the need to share, and we encourage them to do it. And the minute that happens, that sparks a conversation in their circles, in their colleges. And this has happened. There been a whole a horde of volunteers who've come to us for events from one Hyderabad Soul Sante, sort of a exhibition that happened, Sante that happened, where we got a lot of youth to sort of rent these things, and it became immediately cool. So it is about being able to customize the solution or the change that we want to the person that we are talking to, and that is what we always focus on when we talk to any of the clients. Next slide, Supani. I
So,
don't know how I am doing.
Are you almost done?
Yeah. Just another, 3 minutes, 4 minutes I have.
Yeah, two minutes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. One other beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is that while you may think that you're alone, this one company who's doing rental, there are many rental cutlery companies, but then it's not just about rental cutlery, right? It is about a whole opportunity to influence at multiple levels, be it decor, be it fashion, be it involving people to get dirty with get their hands dirty with mud, many things. The thing is, when we go out for an event, we also consult with the client and ask if they would be interested in let's say it's a wedding, the whole wedding flowers. We have a partner who does beautiful products out of flower waste. So they're called holy waste. And so it is about building these kind of key partnerships to be able to get a larger sort of involvement and also encourage each other. So in terms of community partnerships, I think the paths are endless, because for every single packaged plastic item today, there are alternatives. You just have to go on the net and find them. And to us, coming from next slide, Suparnaji, coming from the Indian setup, where even an old t-shirt becomes a rag cloth, right? I mean, till the last thread is done. We are very used to not so far away in our life, used to living frugally, taking only what we want, respecting every being on the earth, respecting and giving that sacredness to every single thing around us. It's not so difficult. In our journey, we found that it's just that little bit of nudge, and a very customized nudge, I would say. So what can each of us do? There are many things here. And in terms of incentives as to why we should do this, right? In my own household, we can't do without namkeens, right, as Indians. So if we carry that big steel dabba to the namkeen guy who sells it in big bulk, then there are going to be 5-6 customers who are going to obviously stare at you. The guy itself was very apprehensive to give it to us in the first time, but then the one time that my husband did not take it, in like 3-4 visits, 5th visit he didn't take it, the guy is like, sir, I talk about you to a lot of people, I can't give it to you in plastic. No, I'm not giving it to you. So the kind of impact we can create, it is quite underestimated when we carry these things, or trying to make zero waste school. There are hundreds of original and creative ways to do this. It's just a matter of just awakening to that that is closest to you. And anywhere in this journey, our learning has been that when a client makes even one shift, recognize that and be able to appreciate it. Because the minute we make this a very oh, I'm an environmentalist, I'm going to be I'm very sustainable, and everything I do, it's in fact impossible. You have to start somewhere. You have to start small. Yeah, I think I'm done. The last slide, I'm not sure what it is on. I think it's just our, so basically, to sum it up, our education journey has been reducing waste at source. And I feel that many customers, many people in this journey from all age groups have, come in. It's a matter of being able to make this cool for their context and background.
Right. Thank you so much, Reena. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we were originally planning breakout rooms, but I think because we, had a little bit of those tech glitches at various levels, we are going to skip the group work. What I would suggest is that we will put a question on the chat. Essentially, because we have a lot of people on this call today who feel this topic is very close to their heart. They are very deeply engaged personally and with others about what needs to be done for education for life. We would like to collect your suggestions and any inputs that you may have that we can take into a policy brief. And so I'm just going to put the question on the chat. And may I request, I know that Vibhaji's shared a Google Doc, but I think we might not have time for that. So I'm putting the question on the chat. And may I request everyone to put your suggestion or any input you might have for a policy brief that we would be creating for C20 on education for life. Let's just take a minute and think about it, and please share your thoughts on the chat, and we will take it and collate it for the policy brief.
Thank you, Suparna. There's just one small thing I wanted to share with other participants here. Okay.
Yeah.
Ridhima, my colleague, very well. Ridhima designed this very interesting challenge called the 30-day plastic challenge. And we've run it in many schools and colleges, and it's very engaging. You must have tried it as well. So anyone wants to try it, it's very tailor-made to the Indian condition. Simple things. Roz ek vachan lo 30 din ke liye. It's there in Hindi and English. I'll just share the link for the challenge. I can share the, you can take a look at this, and it's very, very easy to implement. Happy to share content if you want to edit it, tailor make it for your own community. We can also help you translate it. Ridhima has just posted the link.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whoever wants to with this, very easy. Very, if you make it a little bit competitive, I think it can be easily taken to younger, college students, university students. Maybe an app would also be helpful. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
So may I request, please share, Simanta ji has responded. I can see many known names on this, group, and it's really nice to see you all. Can you please also share your thoughts on chat, or maybe if you want to unmute and speak? So what kind of, input would you like to share for a policy brief? We've heard a lot. Sure, Yash, please do.
Thank you, Suparna. How are you, seeing you after so long?
Nice to see you too. Yeah.
So recently I set out on a journey to explore climate challenges in our region. So I was traveling across India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. And I'll share some of the common challenges which are found. So I met a lot of climate related stakeholders, from government to startups to communities. And one thing is that there are a lot of good entrepreneurs, amazing innovation out there, but people who need those innovation at their disposal, they can't find it. You cannot find it on Google. Even if you write the exact name on Google, you cannot find it. It is a big challenge, the discovery of those. So one big suggestion would be to maybe bring them or help them in that discovery, maybe with the upcoming government portal, GEM portal. There are so many different portals for e-commerce and startups. So incorporating them and rather promoting them at top. So another thing is people across the region, especially people who are slightly older than me, for them, um, climate change does not happen in front of them. What I mean by that is they do not associate anything with heat wave or whatever. It is just another day, and this is how the world works. Like it gets warmer. So to be able to associate those things with climate change is a big thing. And climate change in itself is not something a lot of folks relate. Why? I personally feel because of language barrier. Climate change, the word does not associate. And then Jal Vayu Parivartan, it sounds Sanskrit. It doesn't sound like something harmful. So these are big challenges. Another thing is the nature of it. It is so I would say exponential, right? There's this example: if you fold that paper, a paper 45 times, it reaches moon. Similarly is climate change. Even people who are reading about climate change or who are into it, have spent some time, cannot comprehend the scale at which it is affecting us today. And unless we do the science and maths and show it to them, and it is very hard for people who are not actively into it to be able to visualize that. So um, and then another big thing which comes is people who are slightly into it have a little bit of understanding. There's this popular discourse which says individual actions do not account that much to climate change as much as the policy and the corporate thing. So programs like life, definitely it is very essential because we are the building block and everything. But then there's a lot of skepticism towards it, right? Are we dispelling that skepticism to the larger market, right? Because at times it is also seen as policy level greenwashing. I don't know if this is the right way to
Yeah.
address it, but yeah. So communication around that, like how it is contributing, and it is not just another way to distract. um,
Yeah.
yeah, these are some of the points. Thank you.
Thank you, Yash. Yeah, I think this thing about what can I do individually is something that's always, it doesn't make a difference. The problem is so big, as an individual, how much can I do? What's the point? Is something that, yeah. And I like this thing about, cool. In fact, there was a thought of getting somebody from media into this conversation, because I think we need to tell the stories that we are hearing here on media and actually make, what shall we say, make it cool to follow a lifestyle for environment. And so we should actually have a conversation with media as well on this. Yeah. Nice to hear you. Any other? Please feel free to unmute and speak. We can take a few more, maybe another 3-4 minutes. Lots of interesting comments in the chat. Thank you very much for sharing. Yeah. Right. Manikji is would like to hear from someone who is in an educational institute. Anybody here in an educational institute?
Hello, I work in an educational institute for fundamental years. So we are following many practices, like we are not allowing the plastic ka dabba at school and the bottles.
Right.
So students, they compulsorily have to bring the water bottles which are made up of steel. Then our teaching aids are also made up of cloth and not of plastics. Either they are wooden or made up of something which is like cloth. Then secondly, in our schools, we don't have water bottles at the functions as well. We use tambya bhanda, what we call in Marathi, the steel ka.
Right.
So we are following some practices. Also, composting is done at school. So whatever is possible and practically feasible, we are following that.
Lovely. Thank you, Akshata ji, for sharing that.
One thing which I would like to share is many times it happens that the substitutes, we don't get it easily. Like for example, in malls, if you go for shopping and plastic bags are not there for buying different things, and the material which is available is not equivalent to that property wise. So we should have a substitute handy that will improve the situation.
Yeah.
Even
Absolutely.
for packaging, now the thermocol is not allowed, plastic is not allowed. But
Hmm.
sometimes you don't have any other option. I mean, at least I don't know. Maybe there are options, but those are not easily available or maybe not cost effective. That is one more factor.
Hmm. Akshata ji, what is your name of your school?
I'm working in Maharshi Karve Stri Shikshan Samstha.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so I think we are now at 4:55 and maybe we should bring this webinar to a close, but continue with the journey. This is a lot. We have heard a lot of very interesting strategies, experiences of people, lot of insights gained from people's practical experience. And we have, because one is we have got the recording, but also that we have made a lot of notes, which we hope will sort of get collated soon and inform the policy document. I want to thank all our speakers of today. It's been amazing to have you spend time with us. And we've learned a lot. I think we also learned from each other, which was also amazing. And I want to also thank, on behalf of Dr. Dange and the team of Yojak, to all the participants who have participated today. And we hope that you will carry this message beyond this webinar into the world that we are all actively living in. I will now invite Shubhangi ji to just offer closure and also a small prayer for universal well-being. Shubhangi ji.
Yes. Dhanyavad, Suparna ji. We deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks. Our heartfelt thanks to all the eminent speakers and distinguished invitees. We will bring together all your valuable suggestions and inputs and share all these points in the conference of 3rd and 4th June. Your valuable insights, principles, and frameworks that can be taken to other contexts. And most of these points shared by you, we will try to put them into policy document. We extend our sincere thanks to our participants for being here with us and with your perspectives and for active participation. Actually, in Marathi, it is very rightly said that Nitya Divas Jagruti Sa. Each and every and each day is of awakening. And so we should think today to ensure better tomorrow. And for that, let's shift from theory of sustainability to practice. We thank you once again for making this webinar value-based and effective. Thank you all.
So Shubhangi ji, shall we do Sarve Bhavantu?
Bilkul.
Right.
Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Paschyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Shubhangi ji, and thank you very much to Bijal Ben, to Soumya, to Simanta ji, and to Reena. Thank you very much for your sharing your practical experiences and insights from your practice. And we will certainly take these inputs into the policy document. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very
I
much.
think Bijal Ben has maybe
Thank you so
lost her internet, but yeah, thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you.